Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bevies and Balls. Today, we're going to be focusing on the exciting world of playoff baseball. As always, I'm Matteus. Today, I got this lovely collective arts, Ransack the Universe, that I'll be sipping on. Please, if you guys want to join us in our little game of drinking to every take you don't agree with, please enjoy responsibly. And make sure you're of legal drinking age. And who am I with today?
You know who it is. It's your boy, Luca, back at it again. Another suffering year as a Jays fan, but with a Budweiser Zero non-alcoholic beverage. Sometimes you don't need the alcohol to have an enjoyable time. They give these out after the Blue Jays games at the Rogers Centers. My goodness. I sound like I have drinking alcohol, but no. These are very scrumptious, and just make sure you don't always need the alcohol in terms to enjoy your sports and your beverages all the time.
Amen. Thank you,
Ooh,
Luca. But
definitely,
hey,
definitely could fool me. Yes.
I imagine Blue Jays fan, your liver took enough of a beating as is. But speaking
Yeah.
of the Blue Jays, what happened, man?
Mhm.
All this hype, all this talk, just to go winless and lose in the wild card yet again. I'm not a Jays fan, Luca. Enlighten me. What did
What?
you see? What happened?
Oh, will I enlighten you ever? It feels like this was supposed to be a team whose identity was hitting bombs and pitching well, and we got one of those. The pitching was phenomenal. Nearly the entire rotation was healthy basically all year, and they were very beneficial towards making the team a good product on the field. Here's the problem, though. We couldn't hit for shit. And it was as if these new Rogers renovations have somehow taken away all the magic powers from these hitters. So many hitters had just career worst, like OPS plus seasons. The power ball was not there. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. led the team in home runs with 26. And I think there's so many other teams that I think at least like if you look at the Atlanta Braves lineup, which we'll get to later, I don't think there was a player that didn't have double-digit home runs. So it was very aggravating, and the product overall just made it not fun to watch. So going into this series, you're just like, okay, this year sucked. There's been nothing fun about it. The trades that were made in the offseason are like logistically working in the defensive sense and everything, but the offense is not there. So his offense, it's got to come eventually, right? It's got to show up. People got to be ready for the prime time. Maybe that's what it is. It's when the playoffs start. That's when everything starts to get going. You've seen it in other places as well. So you've seen it when the Phillies run last year. This wasn't even close. It's just like game one was one of those situations where it's like, look, we can't hit. Nothing was done wrong. The Minnesota Twins have a good eye on Gosman, but that wasn't why we lost. The reason you lost is because you left runners on base. You did that a lot in the first game. I think it was 15 runners left on base the entire series, and that's just unacceptable. It was a very regular season or playoff series of any sort. So it's that was at least game one where you're just like, okay, we got beat today. You can come back tomorrow, and you see what Brios has and tries to put you back in the fight. And then they decide to pull him with 47 pitches thrown, and that's been a whole controversy because everyone's like, oh my god, like who knew about this? Did you have to do it? People are pointing fingers back and forth in management and the coaches, everything. At the end of the day, like, if you want my opinion on it, it was dumb. I think everyone who would watch that game would tell you it was dumb. But the problem was just what angers me the most is that I've seen this before. This has happened before. If you are my fellow Jays fans out there, if you remember 2020 against Tampa Bay, Matt Shoemaker was mowing through that World Series bound Tampa Bay Rays lineup in 3 innings. He threw 30 pitches. It was seamless. It's like, oh, you can't let this guy out. Why? Replaced him another pitcher. I think we lost that game 11-2. That's what kind of angered me a bit more. It's as if we'd never learned from our mistakes, and some tried to blame that on the previous manager, Charlie Montoyo. But at the end of the day, it feels like the same management has been a part for both of these situations, and both have not exactly worked out well. No discredit to Yusei Kikuchi, who had to be brought in and save this mess. The plot to turn over the lineup was in theory accurate, but the difference is you need to also let the players play. You need to watch the game, have the feel is the big word. Have a feel for what's going on. And some managers have the ability to do that, some managers don't. And it would have been preferred just to at least have that, because that was undoubtedly was going to be Jose Barrios' greatest start of his career. He was unbelievably electric, and it was yes. So uh, it's a bit removed from the wound, so I have less vitriol in my voice, but it was definitely there, and it's going to be very hard to. This team has a lot to prove next year. There could be a lot of
Mm,
changes, and I wouldn't doubt it in any sense. So if
yeah.
things don't get done next year, you could see many drastic moves. I don't mean to be a bummer, but Bo Bichette in the Dodgers jersey is getting eerily closer and closer, and that's a visual I don't like. So I pray to God this team comes back much more stronger. But
Well,
yeah, it was a no contest for
Vladdy's a
me.
free agent too, right? After next year,
I think it might be
because
either
I know he's
next year or year
eligible
after.
for an extension. I know he's
Yes.
eligible for an extension
Mm-hmm.
as we speak. And hey, if I'm the Jays, obviously Vladdy's camp would never want a contract now, but his value's at an all-time low. He's had a super two disappointing seasons after his incredible 2021 year.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, who knows? Maybe he's another one who might walk away. But
It
I agree with you. In terms of the Barrios getting taken out early, uh, that doesn't matter if they can hit, right?
exactly. Yeah,
I
that was the point at the end of the day. Like if you
like
can't hit, get picked off in those key situations. Like again, you gotta have a feel for both
yeah,
for the team and the management, et cetera, et cetera.
exactly. Now just thank you for that, Luca. I'm just gonna have a few words about the Marlins.
Yeah, I was
Hey
about to say
yo,
what exactly happened there. Like congratulations, you
oh
finally got into the dance. We had
yeah,
playoff baseball
hey,
in
let's go.
Miami.
No, well, not necessarily, but we weren't. But all I'm saying is,
Mm.
for a team that people expected to be well under 500 and not anywhere near the playoff picture was a lovely surprise, very pleasant surprise. A lot of the young guys, I feel, the sky's the limit. Definitely a lot of great moves done by management, especially at the trade deadline, acquiring players like Jake Berger, who I thought played phenomenally
Played
well.
out of his mind. I'm looking like a little like Jake Berger right now. It's kind of funny, but yeah, no, yeah, Jay Berger went nuts at his deadline. I can't believe
Yeah.
that's a trade I saw. Like I was driving back from work that day and I heard about this. I'm like, there's no way that just happened, right? So
hmm
credit to Kim
Like,
Hang there.
yeah, huge credit to her. And again, first ever, female manager to make the playoffs, not just in baseball, but in North American sports. Um, so, we love our women in sport. Again, lots of questions looking forward to next year. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to build off over what 90% of the lineup, first ever time in a postseason situation against a team that just had a World Series trip. It was to be expected, mind you. If I see one more ground out into a double play, I really, I might just lose it. But that's the way the offense was sort of built during the regular season. It was all about getting these they're not a power hitting team,
Not at
right?
all. Not
They're
at least not at the surface.
no, right? And happens. Philly, we don't need to talk about how great Philly is. So I'm just super hopeful that all the youngsters can build off this experience. The team can build off this looking forward in the future. Seeing that the Mets are stumbling, the Braves have a lot of question marks moving forward. The Nationals are the Nationals. We don't need to even discuss it. So honestly, I have a bunch of cautious optimism for the future. Sandy is gone for the next year due to his Tommy John surgery, but I feel like the pitching staff is deep enough to obviously when you miss a talent like that, you're gonna feel it. But I think they have the depth to at least try to make it to the dance again next year and maintain that super high whenever they make the playoff percentage. They win the World Series, which as of right now, because COVID doesn't count. Sorry, Dodger fans. They two out of three ain't bad. Two out of three ain't bad. But yeah,
Technically, yeah. And just a quick note before we move on, I think everyone was kind of just like, oh, the Marlins are the odd duckling here. They don't belong here. They kind of backed into these playoffs. They kind of walked in there. They kind of scraped their way into this
yeah,
position. Like they beat out a bunch
a-
of good teams in the Cubs and
amen.
the Reds just should be in this sort of contention. And what people don't really give credit for is that they basically came in limping. Like Luis
Yeah.
Arias could barely walk. Soler was hurt at the time. Like a lot of
Sandy
wounds were
was
being tended
gone.
to. Yes, Sandy, Yuri
Yeah.
Perez wasn't available, so there was a lot. It was very much a secondary kind of team, not exactly at the full strength. That does not excuse in
Hmm.
any way, but
No.
if you can imagine this team had a much more better potential with a lot more balanced lineup and more uh, balanced hitting, and maybe some new additions can help make this team even more dangerous than it technically was to be playoff eligible. So that's good. Uh,
Yeah.
you have to see if Soler signs, if Josh Bell remains with the option he has, but it'd be very interesting. And I do, as much as it sucks to lose an arm like Alcantara, I think it opens the door for a lot more opportunities for more young pitchers because the Fishers have an endless amount of arms. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah,
So yeah.
I love it
Mhm.
personally. And again, just your point on the NL. I know there's some sentiment. Well, they're the only team that didn't collapse
Mhm.
and got in, but hey, collapses happen all the time. You have to stay resilient and
Steve Cohen, New York Mets.
get your wins when you can, right?
Mhm. Absolutely.
Anyways, speaking of our favorite teams, wild card series, let's do a little fun little segment. One sentence uh impression on each wild card series, whether that's from a certain team's perspective, just something you've observed. For example, for myself, in terms of the Marlins series, I'd say another ground out because there were lots of
It's just too many
those.
groundouts. Yeah.
It basically was.
Mm.
Um, and again, that's just my biggest takeaway was the Philly defense. Hey, errors happen all the time, and credit to the Phillies for not making any, or I think maybe one.
I'll
Um,
get to a team that made errors shortly. But
oh yeah, so I'd say that's my impression. Would you agree? Do you have a different sentence you'd maybe use?
that basically makes sense. My sentence was basically going to be thanks for coming, and not, and to no disrespect to Miami, but like it's just two different eras, and this is their first time making the playoffs, so it's good for them to get a taste. And once you get a taste, you yearn to be back there and to prove everybody wrong that you did the first time. So it was a fine impression. They eventually did get some runs off the board. I think if you run into a different team than Philly, like a Milwaukee Brewers, you might have a better shot of perhaps moving on, but. It was a respectable showing, and hopefully the Marlins return.
Amen.
Mhm.
Speaking of the Brewers, in the Brewers D-back series, I would, my impression was hitting question mark.
Yeah,
Uh,
I believe earlier you said the Brewers cannot hit for shit, and to that I do take a drink
amen.
because it's like you're not wrong, but it's one of those. I would just say uh, it's never count the snakes out. Don't count all your chickens before they hatch because you can have
That's a good one.
rolling into the
That's a good
series.
one.
Brewers had their three-headed monster, and then just when they thought they were comfortable, boom, Woodruff gets hurt, probably out for next season as well, which is huge, a huge blow for them. So essentially, you had that. You had a comfortable sort of lead. They had leads in both games, and they still continued to cough it up. The Diamondbacks just had the numbers on every single pitcher the Brewers threw out there. Like Corbin Burns and Devin Williams are names that strike fear into the hearts of hitters, and they just treated them like they're ragdolls. So it was very impressive and has led the Snakes to go on quite the run they had to today. More on that later.
Yes, sir. Switching over to the AL, how would you describe your Blue Jays series with the Twins?
Go with uh, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, uh, kind of deal. Like, what do you want me to say? One run over 18 innings, 15 runners left on base. You pulled the starter way too early, which gave you're basically your only chance of perhaps squeaking out a win. It's just, I don't know. This season is going to be long remembered as one of the more painful ones, and we pray to God that something turns around next year. But credit to the Twins as well. They were a legit team and deserve to win the full way through. Congratulations on breaking their streak.
Amen.
Mhm.
I was gonna go again, similar. Maybe a little shot at Vladdy saying, "Don't get caught,"
Yeah,
but because I
yeah.
feel like that was a huge momentum changer in the series. Um,
That was basically the
seeing
game right there, for being
yeah,
honest.
seeing your guy right, um, make a mistake like that.
Stuff.
And then I think I respect the Jays for trying to challenge the play, get having the back of your guys. However, yo,
Yeah, no,
that was blatant. It was
yeah. Oh,
blatant.
it was absolutely blatant, but I think just to save face, you had to challenge it. If you don't challenge that, then you essentially just kill the kid's confidence. So
Yeah.
luckily, they gave him a shot there. But at that point, it was just like, you had to try. Maybe you had a shot. But
Don't get caught. And then thoughts on the last wild card series that we haven't talked about.
Texas and Tampa Bay, defense
Oh
wins
yeah, super
championships.
forgettable.
Uh, Defense wins championships, and offense is almighty. And both of those things rang true. I think the Rays played the worst defensive brand of baseball out of any team in the postseason so far. We had 4 errors in the first game, and it cost them that. And then they just kind of got blown out the second game. They basically did not show up. I think they scored one. Like the Blue Jays scored 1 run only in the series. It was just a manhandling, and there was a lot of concern with Texas coming in because they had a shaky bullpen. Didn't have to bother because their starters were just dominant. Rays couldn't touch them, so it's
Yeah,
kind of
I
that.
mean, for me, I would go on my sentence was sort of health and mistakes. One team was much healthier than the other. The Rays had plethora of injuries to a bunch of different guys throughout the lineup.
Pitching as
And then
well,
as
the
I
entire rotation on the IL basically.
yeah, like forget, your while defense does win, health wins too, damn it. You know? I ain't never see no with no battered and bruised team like the Rays were make it far. So that's how I would describe it. Mistakes in health. Now, moving on from our little fun segment of the wild card review, let's talk about the divisional series now. Let's stay in the AL. We just talked about Texas. Let's talk about Texas some more against the over 100 win Orioles that ended in a sweep. Luca
Yes,
Albion. I saw that. I was like, we saw an Orioles game this year,
we did. Yes.
and they looked phenomenal
Mhm.
all year. Luca, what happened here, man? What
Uh,
happened?
so we did see in fact the Oil game. They looked like a team that was just like very consistent in everything in every category. There's a couple of stats I want to throw at you. Uh, that sweep that occurred by the hand of the Texas Rangers was the first time they have been swept in 512 days. That was the first sweep and the first one in the Adley Rutschman era. So since Adley Rutschman, their catcher, debuted, he's a phenomenal player. He will be a phenomenal player. He's going to win MVP. It's just inevitable at this point. Basically the entire reason why their pitching held up so well throughout the entire year, and that's kind of what killed them in the process. It's essentially having scissors versus paper and your rock paper scissors combo. Uh, the Texas Rangers offense can be absolutely dynamite when at its best, and that it was. And then the Baltimore Orioles pitching, uh, when you, which we got great contributions from Kyle Gibson, Grayson Rodriguez near the end of the stretch, and Dean Kramer as well. It just sometimes you go out there and you don't have the stuff, and sometimes the odds sort of catch up. The Orioles also did not have the quote unquote playoff experience that a lot of these other guys. When you look at the Rangers lineup, even though it is the Rangers' first time back in the postseason since 2015, 16, I believe, you do have guys that have won MVPs in the World Series and the Championship Series before. That's Corey Seager. Marcus Semien loves balling out in the playoffs. There's like a lot of guys that are dogs that
Mm-hmm.
are in sort of that mentality. So it's
Manager too, right?
yeah, oh, absolutely. Bruce Bochy,
I
three.
feel like that was one of the factors I felt like um definitely played an impact on the series. Obviously, I feel like it's difficult for me to rate managers on how much they truly do impact the series, but I for sure felt like that was another facet that Texas just dominated them in.
Absolutely, and in especially just being able to manage sort of certain aspects of the game, and again more so by experience. Bruce Bochy won 3 championships past decade. Brandon Hyde is managing his first team into the postseason, and he's been there for a couple of years. He's suffered through the dark years of Baltimore, and he deserves the opportunity. But sometimes you just gotta learn, and sometimes you get smacked. And regardless of all this, I do think the Orioles will come back and be a very successful postseason
Mhm.
team. It just this
Oh yeah,
just wasn't their year, and that's
exactly.
kind of
Again,
happens.
I think Orioles looking towards the future is so bright.
And
Well, again,
terrifying for the Jays fans.
oh yes. Imagine being a fan of a team in the AL East. That's where the struggles really begin.
hmm
Uh, Again, sticking on with the AL, Twins, Astros. Do we even got to talk about how the Astros are just a machine?
I think we do because this was the one year they themselves came limping, not because of injuries, but just like in terms of play. They very much could have missed these playoffs. They ended up losing 5-6 to both Oakland and Kansas City, which are the two worst teams in the league, in with like a week to go, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, there's no way they don't make the playoffs, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, fuck you guys, we're absolutely making the playoffs. We're going to take the division." So they just continually just shove it down people's throats. The Twins, to their credit, put up a fantastic fight. There was never a game where the Twins got sort of absolutely just smoked in every regard. There was a bit of like a teetered matchup. Game three specific, excuse me, game three specifically, where there was like a very large margin defeat. It just came down to a very Jays like problem of not scoring runs, scoring position. But at the end of the day, the Twins kept it close and were very worthy combatant for the Astros. They definitely gave them run for their money. Shout out to just a moment that was like huge and probably won't get remembered because nothing sort of came of it. But Byron Buxton is a first overall pick for the Minnesota Twins. He is a phenomenal player, could be a top 10 player in the league if he's just stayed healthy, and he's just been rooted with injuries. And he was an addition to the roster in Game 4 because the Alex Kirilloff, I believe, suffered an injury, so they made the switch. He was healthy, ready to go. He didn't start the game, but he got pinch hit. He pinch hit in the 8th, and the crowd is so loud. I pray to God there's a clip on YouTube somewhere, but it was the loudest I've ever, like one of the loudest ovations I've ever heard in the baseball. And it's a shame nothing happened because if he had tied a game with a home run, that would be an all-time moment, forever remembered. But I just want to give Byron Buxton his flowers because he also went under arthroscopic knee surgery afterwards, and he needs he could be on the mend. And I hope Byron Buxton gets more moments like that in the career with the Twins continue to have playoff success. Also, shout out Pablo Lopez and Sonny Gray, they're studs. Pablo Lopez can pitch in any big game he wants for me.
Yeah. Also, again, the talent that Houston has is oozing with talent. Alvarez, Altuve, you know the names, you know who they are.
Jordan
They just
Alvarez
keep.
is an absolute monster. Like I don't.
He's so good.
He's
How
he
is he
is. Oh
this
my
good?
god. Oh my god. Like if like look, Dodgers fans, we'll get to you later, but like Josh Fields is the reason why you don't have him. It's just Josh Fields. Could you imagine if this man was a Dodger? It'd be just terrifying. But he's a mutant. He feels like he's
Mhm.
born to hit a baseball, and he just like
He's
every
going
single
to
home run
crush
swing.
your soul.
Yes, exactly. He's a soul destroyer. Good lord. Oh, this him
Well,
and Jose Abreu too is going nuts. That's cool
yeah.
too.
Well, speaking of the Dodgers, let's quickly touch on the perennial chokers. How I swear, like when was the last time? Like, correct me if I'm wrong. In the last decade, they've won their division 10 times.
At least 9 of 10. They did not win it the year San Francisco wound off like 107 wins, but every other year it's been basically
Okay,
theirs.
yeah, so yeah, 20. Is that
The
2012 that
the,
last
the
year?
AL West
Or
goes
was
through
that
LA.
14?
No, it was
Yeah,
no the Giants
one
won
in
107
14.
games in 2021. They won in 12, 14, and
Sorry, sorry.
yeah, you know.
So Giants are so forgettable. Such forgettable.
That's unfortunately
Anyways,
so.
the classic Dodger can't win unless it's a COVID shortened, no fans in the stadium. Playoff Kershaw in full display yet again. Um, Honestly, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. I feel the stars did not show up. The lights were too bright yet again. And the Dodgers, frankly, absolutely dispatched by the D backs.
They got
Anything you want to
whooped.
add there?
They
They
got
did.
whooped. It was like as close as these games were, you felt like it just wasn't a contest. The tone of getting six off Kershaw in the first inning, not letting Clayton Kershaw get out of the first inning, was the entire series. Like, look, Clayton Kershaw's a bona fide Hall of Famer, but to see him just continue to get manhandled in the playoffs, it just hurts. Because like as a fan, you're like, oh, we want this guy to finally do that. Like, when David Price, who was a perennial non-playoff guy, finally got it done and helped the Red Sox win a World Series, that was such a fulfilling moment. I don't know if Clayton Kershiw's gonna get that moment, and he keeps coming back to the Dodgers every year, and he just, you feel sad, but you're so happy for Arizona. These bats are going crazy. Like this lineup is like ridiculous. The way they just hit bombs. Corby Carroll, Ketel Marte, Tommy Pham, fantastic deadline acquisition. Like,
How as a Blue Jays fan, how did you feel about the trade?
oh yeah, as a quick summary there. I love Dalton Varsho. I think he had a really bad year offensively, but I think you could also credit that to just getting used to an absolutely different ballpark and a completely different side of the world. Uh, Not like that side of the world, but you know what I'm saying. And he's also fantastic defensively, and so objectively he works. If Varsho and Kirk can be much more productive than they are this year, and at the end the trade can look a lot better. But yeah, Lourdes Gurriel and Gabriel Moreno look amazing. Gabriel Moreno was not supposed to be this good this quickly. Like this, his development just skyrocketed, and he found his power stroke. It was a concern because he only hit like what 2 home runs in AAA, and he just hit like for like just strictly average. It was so yeah, but to see him be successful is fantastic. I'm very proud of both of them, but they deserve everything with this. But like this lineup is nasty. Christian Walker, like we were talking about it earlier, seeing them hit just 4 bombs in the 4th inning that one day, and Moreno fouling off one, just missing by the pole, and next pitch is like, never mind, I got this. That's so fucking cool. Do you know how much I want that as a fucking as a Jays fan? Just something, just the power stroke. Let's just do it. I don't care. Like
That's a that to be that I was watching that game felt like a Hollywood script, man.
exactly.
But let's move on to our last divisional series, the much anticipated Braves versus Phillies. And let me tell you, Luca, first of all, those Philly fans, I love it. I love the energy. They're walking the chop. Oh my goodness. Inject that into my veins. And the team that played the Phillies, oh my goodness. They played really well, but I'm not sure if you feel the sentiment. I felt like Atlanta had one of the biggest choke jobs in modern day baseball. Have you seen those numbers offensively?
Mm-hmm.
Disgusted. You're
Mm-hmm.
talking me of, some MVP candidates like Acuna. What do you do? You didn't do. He was invisible,
Mm-hmm.
right? Their entire lineup was invisible. Their pitching heavily underperformed. I think this is one of the bigger chokes of the year in terms of baseball. And if you're the Braves, I feel like you have a lot of questions of what went wrong, and ignoring the off the field controversies with the clubhouse and
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Just the product on the field. What was that?
The couple points wondering in there. I don't think you can ignore the off the field thing. Obviously, we're referring to Orlando Arcia was reported to be saying "attaboy Harper" when he got himself out in double play, which happens. Like base running mistakes, they'll happen. It's tough to happen at that point, but like people come back there. It's also said in the clubhouse all the time. It doesn't make any sense, but you can't tell me that didn't motivate them to just come back and just kick some ass in game 3, and that's exactly what they did. They never looked back. It was never sort of close from there. I wouldn't say the pitching. Okay, I guess objectively the pitching did underperform, but similar to your Marlins, it's the rotation was not healthy in the slightest. Max Fried, that was his first time pitching an MLB game since I want to say August, going in there, and the Philly batters also had his number already, so that was just a bad recipe to begin with. Bryce Elder is and a couple other teams sort of a couple other games that 5-0 game was the 5-4 win, excuse me, was electric. When Austin Riley got the game leading home run in the bottom 8. Like this year is just fun. It was like exactly what you want out of playoff baseball. It's a shame it only could go 5. It should have been a 7. But there is a lot of questions, and you're right. This team tied the record for the most home runs in a single season with 307. They just hit bombs. Were elite in every single aspect except for their bullpen wasn't exactly the greatest, but that wasn't the reason why they lost. The reason why they couldn't hit. The Philly,
Yeah.
I think sometimes you just look at a team and they have that aura about them. And I think Philly, when they took care of the Rays last season, that aura was created. And they just went on this generational run. And it just looks like they just will not stop. They're just a bunch of dogs that will just absolutely rip you apart. And in that ballpark, I've never been to a road game in my life. I realized this recently. And if I'm going anywhere first, I got to go to Citizens Bank Park. It sounds like just such a great time to be at, especially in the playoffs. Like
Oh
there's
yeah.
so many videos being posted of just like the home runs without the audio. It's like inject that in my veins, as you said. But yeah,
Hmm.
basically, don't poke the bears, and nothing is sort of guaranteed. I guess I I think the whole like quote unquote President's Trophy curse that we have in like hockey, at least, it can translate over here sometimes because you can win how many games in the regular season, but you also need to be sort of locked in for the playoffs.
Hmm.
So I don't know.
Well, speaking of, um, given all these 100-win teams getting absolutely smoked
Schmucked.
in these playoffs, there's been a lot of discussion about, does the format need to change? Is there something that like, does the regular season still matter? Or what do you think? What do you think is are these just, salty Atlanta and LA fans trying to cope? Like, Luca, what do you think about the playoff format, and does the regular season matter?
On the surface, I understand the argument for the new wildcard format. It's a little different. Buys have not really been a thing before. There's a very much a rust versus rest kind of like perspective being looked at there. But the problem is everything's kind of thrown out the window because of the Houston Astros. They were the buy last year. They had 100 plus wins, and they didn't lose a game till the World Series started. They swept everybody. This year, the Houston Astros won their division. They didn't get 100 wins. They were a 90-win team, but they still had that rest time, had that bye, and they still won, and they still looked as good of a team as ever. It's like on the surface, I get it. Like they didn't play well. They're not back in their mojo. Not back in their zone. But you gotta find it. This is the playoffs, man. Like do whatever you gotta do. The Braves, who mentioned that they were suffering from this like last year, they ran simulated games during their time at being waiting, resting, waiting for the bye, and didn't obviously didn't do all that much. It's it's a very interesting debate to argue, but at the end of the day, like it's working. More fans are tuning in. Objectively, in a business sense, is a fantastic idea, and it also just creates great stories like the Phillies last year
Yeah.
and the Snakes this year are also a sixth seed. Like that team would not have made the playoffs in previous format. Like it involves a lot of just fun stories. I believe it's no, it was not Tampa. The Jays were the sixth seed. Uh, or not Tampa, Texas, but uh, yeah, it's uh to say that the regular season doesn't matter because of this, I think is a little far fetched because you need to also earn your spot in order to determine which team you're playing. And I guess in my personal opinion, I think it just really is matchup oriented. Uh, like for example, the Marlins could at sometimes beat the brakes off the Dodgers, but they also just get smoked by the Braves. It's just kind of what was happening this year, right? That's kind of what it was. So
Hmm.
I feel like if you like objectively, you throw it in a 3 game series, anything can happen. And Phillies have the Braves number. It sort of looks like,
Yeah.
and sometimes you just gotta
The
show up.
Dodgers choke.
Yep, that's
But
it's unfortunate, but like when
mhm.
generational players go over 21, that's what happens. So
Yeah. My I have again, I share a lot of the same opinions as you there. I just think in terms of baseball, I think it's absolutely heinous that uh you can't just you say we have to wait till October and then slog through a 162 game season. Obviously, again, you need to do well to get into the playoffs, but if you're a higher seed, you get a little bit of rest, and is that the only advantage you get? Home field for, you know,
first 2 games
if you look,
of a series.
yeah, and if you look at for example, the Braves, they had 2 home games. That's it. That's a reward for being the best team in baseball,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is there maybe, if it's home, if it's, you know, I'm not sure what other metrics you could really do that don't impact the game too much. But maybe just making all the games at the home that the higher seeded team or just something to where I feel like you get rewarded more for slogging through the 162 game season when it comes to October. Again, I agree with you. It's a skill issue,
Hmm.
you know? It's not because of the rest that you forgot how to hit. It's not because of the rest that Kershaw gave up 6 runs in an inning,
Hmm.
right? And it's a skill issue.
Yeah.
And frankly, the skills weren't there to pay the bills.
Hmm.
Let's call a spade a spade. The changing the format doesn't necessarily, guarantee success either. Like, part of the reason why I think a lot of us are sport fans is we love underdog stories,
Hmm.
right? We love seeing, the big baddies go down,
Yeah.
right? So I think this is a playoff format that rewards the favorites, while still having opportunities for upsets. And again, I think the biggest issue is in terms of baseball as a whole. How many of these teams can you say we just have to wait till October, slog through all those games? Could you imagine being an Orioles fan watching that season and first playoff baseball game in God knows how long, and y'all don't even get a win?
Yeah,
Like,
if this was the eighth, like the third year into their playoff sort of team caliber or caliber team, playoff caliber team, that would not be acceptable, and then teams would be sort of written apart. So yeah, from that perspective, you obviously get that. And the thing you're kind of saying is just like you mentioned the 162 game kind of grind. The rest is the reward. You get time to heal. You get time to help put that hamstring back in place. Like it's like that kind of aspect is just like that. You're technically getting the reward. It just also you can be a little rusty at times, but like wouldn't you rather be fresh and ready to go? It's a back and forth kind of debate.
mhm.
And yeah, I just don't think you need to change the playoff format already because it's also just built like so many great stories as they've been, but also just built great teams. If you do not have that playoff format last year, the Phillies end up in last seed. They didn't win to get there; they lost. Like they just kind of everyone else kind of like collapsed in order for them to get that spot. If they don't get there, if they miss the playoffs, like is that team looking different than what it is now, than the championship caliber team it's being placed before? That's going to be in the championship series. Like you have to consider like just a whole bunch of sort of factors with that sort of kind of commonality.
Anyway, interesting debate
Mm-hmm.
as always. I'm glad we agree that it is kind of silly. Again, I just think it's Braves and Dodgers fans whining.
At times,
Anyway,
and which like I get, but also like Houston exists. That's the one retort you have to give.
man, yeah.
Mm.
Um, well, moving on to the 4 teams still alive. Luca, rapid fire. I want you to give me your prediction for the two LCS series going on, and then who your World Series winner is.
So, for context, this is being recorded on the day of Game One between Houston and Texas. I am not aware what the score is right now, and
Would you like me
this
to check
no,
before you
I
read your prediction?
no this won't change either way because at the end of the day,
Okay.
the seventh consecutive league championship series appearing Houston Astros. They just won't stop there. It's just they're just inevitable. I like the team just knows how to win ball games. It's just not. It's like an innate skill they've developed. Dusty Baker is a fantastic manager. Was the perfect thing they needed to have after the whole like sign stealing scandal and whatnot. It's the perfect presence to have. You see in the clubhouse with him and Verlander sort of celebrating when they get there, like how just he has that entire locker room just united together, and that's something you really can't discount. And until it happens, you don't vote against the Astros because they haven't lost a like league championship. Like they haven't lost a playoff series I think since not playoff series, but they haven't lost a series before the league championship series I think since like what 2019. Like it's been a while. So nonetheless, it's Houston over Texas, but Texas puts up a good fight, and this will go to seven. I think Texas will just sort of ram through, get a bunch of offensive power as much as they can, but it is what it is till it ain't. And that's kind of the Houston Astros making the World Series. On the flip side, another fun matchup that we totally all expected to be in the championship series this year. I know what you're talking about. Phillies and Snakes. And I am such a big Snakes fan. I love how they're sort of set up. They very much have Phillies vibes of last year because they really don't have like a third pitcher. And neither did the Phillies last year before Ranger Suarez kind of emerged. And then they had like Noah Syndergaard going out there throwing like 3 innings. I am curious who would start a game 4 in a best of 7 for the Snakes. Because right now it's just Gallen, Merrill Kelly, and Brandon Pfaadt sort of been lined up for these typical series. Maybe it's bullpen day, maybe it's a long relief kind of thing. I don't know. But I will say the Phillies are just destined to go back there, man. It feels like there's like a runaway freight train that hasn't been stopped. The one time they've lost, it's like, cool, we like getting punched in the mouth, Mr. Nick Castellanos, and just beat the brakes off the Braves. Like, what more do you want us to do? So, as much as this, I love the Snakes sort of makeup, and I think they'll be a very successful team for a long time coming. I think it's Philly over Arizona in 6 games, but it'll be a very fun series to watch. I think that's going to be a series everyone's going to have their eyes glued to.
And then World Series, that means you have Houston against the Phillies. Who you got there?
In a flip of fates from last year, the Philadelphia Phillies will be crowned the World Series champions in 6 games over the Houston Astros.
I remember that.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, because of their seeding, despite having more wins than the Houston Astros, the Game 6 would be in Houston. Or no, it wouldn't be in Houston. Would it? I'm having a moment right now.
And we'll figure that out later.
Yes. No, it would be in Houston. My brain went hockey mode instead of baseball mode. It would be in Houston because they're technically the higher seed because they won their division, and Philly did not because they had the Braves in front of them. So I think that would be a very fulfilling moment. I think this team is just sort of built. Yes, sir. The team's just built for it. They have a lot more depth than they had last year in terms of the starting rotation. Bullpen's still solid and a lot more options. And they just rake, man. They just hit bombs. Like, what more do you want from the team?
My predictions, I partially agree with you. I am going to go. I think it's going to be Texas that actually takes out Houston. I think the streak has to end eventually. I think Texas has the combination of talent and depth throughout their lineup in all positions that can actually rival Houston's. People forget in the regular season how many they were separated by 2 games.
Yeah, very much a very similar team. Yeah.
So I don't think that and again over that giant sample size, I don't think Houston showed that they are that much more dominant. Mind you, October ball is a different game.
Different animal.
But if I'm looking at this Texas lineup, I see dogs. I see experience. I see a manager that knows how to get the most out of this team. And I think that they're the one with the chip on their shoulder, right? And I think because of that, I think I'm going to go with the Texas Rangers in 7 will defeat the Houston Astros. And going over to the NL, unfortunately, I think the Cinderella story stops here. Unlike the Dodgers, who I will not stop mocking until you guys can win in a non-COVID season with actual fans, and that's not 60 games. I don't think the Phillies. I'm actually creating this new advanced stat called XDAWG. X amount of dogs they got in them. And let me tell you, this Philly team is full of dogs. The expected dogs in them is off the charts.
I was going to run some names. Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Brandon Marsh, JT Realmuto, Alec Bohm. And there's potential you get Reese Hoskins back, who was a playoff god last year. He tore his ACL in the beginning.
And they've been here before.
The juices,
I'm
baby.
I'm just going to say this. We all know Nick Castellanos with his, whenever there's a tragedy. Hey, have you seen the news recently? I'm expecting a Castellanos bomb. wording. My apologies.
Bad wording there. Obviously,
But
awful stuff happening overseas. Anyways, Nick Castellanos is having a fantastic playoffs.
genuinely, but genuinely, I think it's gonna be Phillies in 6. And then finals, I think the Phillies get their revenge from last year. I agree with you in that regard. I think their opponent is different.
Hmm.
And I think the city of Philadelphia is gonna look like the purge for at least 48 hours afterwards.
Fair enough.
So yeah.
Yeah,
Um
that's a big
any
one.
other closing sorry, you go there, Luca.
Oh no. And I guess I just a couple things just to market things, just stuff I didn't think about in terms of the Houston Texas series. That like this is Houston's dominated Texas the entire year in the regular season. They basically just kicked their head in. So it could be very interesting, like Padres Dodgers thing like last year, where it's like the Dodgers were the Padres' daddy until the playoffs came, and then they just found a way to beat them.
Ball, man.
Yep, and then Bruce Bochy versus Dusty Baker as a manager matchup is by far the biggest challenge they've faced,
Oh,
and
I
it's very
can't
much
wait
something
to
I
see
want to
like
see.
the Oh, I can't wait to see like the 7-dimensional mind games that
Hmm.
go on. It's gonna line up choices, all that. I think it's gonna be lovely. Do you have any more closing thoughts just before we head out?
Just enjoy this kind of caliber ball because we're gonna miss it for a good while until March comes back, and just appreciating seeing these environments is just awesome, especially just after not having any fans during COVID. Just like every moment you kind of just soak in. So enjoy the
Oh
ball,
yeah.
and hopefully, big great balls been played.
Oh yeah. I agree. Again, I'm not a for those of you who don't know me very well. I'm not actually that huge of a baseball fan.
This is
I
more
will
my
say the
territory.
pitch clock the pitch clock has definitely gotten me much more invested. Um, the games this season I found have been entertaining and moving much more at a faster pace, which I love as more of a casual fan. I'm excited, man. Like playoff baseball. There's nothing else like it, and I've been super excited and privileged to follow all these great series. And I hope that all of you listeners have been enjoying these playoffs as much as we have been, at least for parts, right? And
Not really if you're a
yeah.
Blue Jays fan, but
Any closing thoughts before we head out?
uh, drink responsibly and ball hard.
Amen. Amen. Also, one last quick note for you fans out there. We will be on social media and we will be taking your questions and answering them at the end of future episodes. We will give you guys more context to that in our next podcast. In the meantime, I'm Matteus,
I'm Luca.
and thank you all very much for tuning in. Dodgers suck.
Have a lovely, lovely day. And if you're in Philly, drink at least 4 beers.
Tide.
Hi.